Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Many Russians over the last 8+ days have transitioned into find out stage of the Russia-Ukrainian war. And this number will continue to grow going forward. I've already touched a little bit in my previous videos, which you should watch, about the incursions from the pro-Ukrainian Russians that are trying to fight against the Putin's regime with actual weapons in different areas, most notably these three southern ones, right over here, and over here as stated on the deep state map. Now, initial assessment was that this is just another incursion that would be there for the propaganda campaign, that is there just to kind of draw attention, raise popularity of these units. And initial assessment was that this was nothing more, that they will just kind of come in there during Putin's elections, then they would quickly get out, and that would be about it. So to make some noise and ruffle some feathers, and that's it. That is not what's happening. The situation has deteriorated because right now there are, firstly, mentions that at least two parts of this area, around the area specifically in Gorkivsky over here at the south and Kozinka, are now in control by these rebel forces, let's put it this way. And these rebel forces are using very, very similar tactics to what we've seen already before. Most notably, they're using tactics that Ukraine is very successfully using on this southern part of the Kherson. The area around Krinky that Ukrainians have been holding for a while has been very problematic for Russians. They cannot really let it go, but they cannot also allow it to stay. And the same is now being executed right over here. So a lot more forces than initially was estimated have actually entered the area. We're counting in thousands of personnel. Russian forces that were stationed in this area, they were not sufficient to hold them back. And the question that you might ask is, well, why? Like, didn't Russia prepare for this? Yes. The problem here is the Russian offensive on Avdiivka. Remember when the Russian offensive of Avdiivka started? It started right as Ukrainian offensive was ending, and while the total offensive that Ukrainians executed is considered a failure for me personally because of the negative media attention that it got, the actual execution of the offensive was very, very costly for Russians. It really took out a big toll on their reserves. And right after the Ukrainian offensive, Russia went into the offensive of their own, digging into that reserves even more. And the fights for Avdiivka were very, 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 very costly. While Russians were able to eventually capture that settlement, it did cost them anywhere from 16,000 as claimed by Russians, which is not very true, which we will find out a little bit later, all the way up to the 40,000 with no non-refundable losses. Oh, no, sorry, it's not refundable, but you get my point. Like the losses that will not come back. The word is just slipping my mind. And so for Russians, this was a huge dedication. We saw that their initial attempts around Avdiivka didn't succeed. So they had to dig deeper and deeper and deeper. I've reported that they have been drawing additional reserves, both from the other directions everywhere across the front lines, but also from Russia itself. And what they were left with is the defense of the border regions with Ukraine, with the troops as less capable as they were. This was so bad that Russians even pulled out of Belarus all the forces that they had inside Belarus. Right now, there are little to no Russian presence inside Belarus, force-wise. Like political pressure is there, but force-wise, they're not present there right now. So basically, what was there waiting for Ukraine, for the Russian rebels on the border, was inadequate. And now Russia is troubled because now these rebels came in not just with the forces like partisan groups. They also came in with equipment. They came in with artillery. They came in definitely with additional support of the additional eyes, intelligence, and everything else from the Ukrainian special forces. It's a full-blown incursion. Now, I still believe that the goal is not to take the land. What I do believe that their attempts will be is to do the same that they're doing right now on the Kherson's southern part, which is you get into the settlement, into some area that Russia just needs to take, that it just need to take, and then you fortify yourself there. And we already seen this happen before. This is specifically what happened in the areas around Gorkivsky and Kozinka, right over here. We've seen videos of Russians trying to assault these settlements, assault into units that are entrenched into these settlements, and these units then defended it. And this was problematic, so Russians actually couldn't do it. So they fell back. Instead, Russians are now using aviation. They are bringing additional artillery. They are trying to bring additional forces to storm it, which is great. It means not only that Russians are now using additional forces on the other part of frontline and preventing any kind of major advances anywhere else, but they're also fighting on the territory of Russia, which is amazing for Ukraine. And Russia has not been taking it lightly. A lot of pro-Russian shills have been coming out with statements, oh, we destroyed everything. Russian General Staff has reported that they've inflicted over 3,500 casualties over 8 days. To put it into perspective, 3,500 casualties on one side in 8 days would be a battle that would be not just seen like from satellite images, the results of these battles, but people from Kyiv could probably get up on top of a building, kind of look pretty far away, and still see the results of that battle. That's the scale of the offensive. And so these pro-Russian shills, they have been saying, oh, just today, on the 20th of March, we actually kicked every single incursion member out of the territory of Russia. Glory to Russia. The problem with that statement is that while like people and pro-Russian shills go running away, haha, we're winning, if you would just look and kind of do a search about Kozinka, for example, this village right over here, about what happened over here, then you would find out that on March 14, Russian General Staff claimed that the attempts to enter Kozinka were prevented. All of the people that tried to enter the territory of the Russian Federation have been destroyed. A small fracture of those that made it back to the territory of Ukraine have actually found themselves on the minefields and were additionally destroyed. Then on March 17th, in the Belgorod direction, which is funny, in the Belgorod direction, all attempts to enter the territory of Russia from the Ukrainian side have been prevented. March 18th, around the village of Kozinka, all the attempts to cross the border with Russia have been prosecuted. And then on March 20, after many days saying that no incursions have been on this territory, they are now claiming, oh, by the way, we have now removed all of the people that were on the territory of Russia. So yeah, Russian General Staff has been a joke, is a joke, and pro-Russian shills are a joke. And continuing with the joke, remember that time when Russians draw planes on their airfields? Well, now they're doing the same things, except with naval harbors. Apparently, after strikes against the Russian submarines and everything, they decided to paint the submarines near their harbor facilities just to make sure that Ukrainians think that they have more submarines that they... I don't know what they actually think, to be honest. But there are also some serious news that is worth taking in consideration. The major news is that Shoigu has declared that Russia will form 2 new armies by the end of 2024. And the honest answer to this is how Russia will do it and the mobilization. Now, this has been long coming, and we all knew that kind of after Putin's elections, that he will do something to mobilize Russian population, because they want to make 2025 very, very hard year for Ukraine. They are now still having some of the resource which are in ammunition, in equipment. So now they just need to kind of get additional manpower, and then they will be in a strong position to win. No, we are now looking down to a very, very massive Russian army that will be coming by the end of 2024. Now, we always, like, again, this is coming from the Russian sources, so you should, like, take it with huge grain of salts. Like, remember I just told you about the number of casualties and that there are no people on the territory of Russia fighting against Russians. So, but it's still something that will happen, and it's worrying, and it's definitely something that we need to be accounting for, especially Ukraine needs to be accounted for. So help from the allies will be as critical as ever. But it's also nice to hear that Ukraine is also doing something to increase their capabilities. One of the major things with drones and anti-drone systems that have been discussed for a while now is what to do with drones that are trying to hit the targets low to the ground. If you've seen drone target videos, you would notice a very, very common pattern. A drone would kind of fly down to try to target the Russian equipment or anything else, and then when it gets closer to the ground, then the signal would just start getting kind of jammed and the image would disappear. This was a big, big question whether or not this needs to be resolved, or is it a big problem, and it was not completely clear how specifically Ukrainians would tackle that. Most notably because it would be very relevant if that AI could target specific part on the vehicle where they would need to hit, because there are weak points on the armor. So now there are apparently reports that now they're having this AI enhanced drones that are able to then take over the navigation of the drone once the operator is taking the attack angle on the vehicle. So the drones in the last 10-15 meters would not deviate from the course. Great addition and great innovation in a drone technology. We'll be looking forward to this. Spain, in interesting news, they are finally providing 20 Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. If you remember correctly, some time ago when the initial Leopard 2 discussions began, Spain was not delivering all of the tanks that they could to Ukraine, most notably because they were in a poor condition. So apparently Spain has finally fixed their tanks and now will be sending them to Ukraine. Beyond that, Germany and Poland are making the armored vehicle coalition for Ukraine, so they will be delivering more armored vehicle to Ukraine. Again, Europe is stepping up. Good for Europe. Let's go on for this. And also, all of these news guys are from Militarny website, and they are doing really good job. You should definitely read through them. It's a very nice news source. Very, very cool. Beyond that, talking about coalitions, Australia is joining the drone coalition. I put this here because I do sometimes get the questions from Aussies saying, what does Australia do? Like, are we doing enough? Are we doing not enough? What are we doing? And here is a great news article that Australians are going to be participating in delivering drones to Ukraine. So thank you so much, and great job, Australia. And this is going to be a great support for Ukraine, especially as the more and more Russians will be pouring into the Russian military. And finally, there is a little bit of a controversial news, and I want to address this. Most notably that there was a Pentagon speaker, that press secretary, that came out and stated a very broad statement. He stated that we're talking here about providing Ukraine with a unique air capability, which is intended to focus on Ukraine's defenses on its sovereign territory within Ukraine's sovereign borders. And all of the people instantly thought that this is like some negative, that Ukraine is being prevented by use of the F-16s on their territory. It's a possibility. Like that, so not to attack the territory of Russia. It's a possibility, yes. However, this statement is very broad. It can mean other things. It can mean that, for example, that the planes would be there only to fight and support Ukraine while it's fighting to restore the borders on the 1991 for Ukraine. So to kick Russia out of the territory of Ukraine, which is the intended goal. It also can mean that Ukraine is not going to be allowed to fly the planes into the Russian territory, but they will be able to shoot probably into the Russian territory. So it's a very, very gray area. So I know there's going to be an outrage, but I would want my community to kind of wait up with this a little bit. So please wait for additional clarification. Let's wait up until we hear confirmation that Ukraine is going to be restricted once again. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, guys. Easter is coming. I'm going to have some of the day off, so hopefully I'll make some additional videos. There's a nice video in the pipeline about the 155mm shells that I will deliver to you. Slava Ukraini, guys. I love you all, and I'll see you next time. Join the Discord, support me and buy me a coffee, and most importantly, subscribe to Ukraine Matters.